My name's Tristan McGlade and I'd like to welcome you here today to my presentation. The title of this presentation is a comparative study of anthropometric measurements between sprinters, long distance runners and triathletes. Now, the purpose of this study was to compare anthropometric measurements between the sprinters, long distance runners and triathletes to determine whether there was a variation in body composition between the three types of athletes and whether an athlete's particular body composition will influence their ability to perform in their chosen sport. Firstly, there are several factors that can affect an athlete's ability to optimally perform in their chosen sport. Some of the factors might include their sex, age, genetics, body weight or body composition. In particular, this presentation will be looking at an athlete's body composition, which can be defined as the percentage of bone, muscle, water and fat in human bodies, which has the ability to affect an athlete's appearance, strength or agility. Whereas if you look at body fat alone, it has the potential to affect an athlete's power, endurance and speed. For example, a lean body is someone who has a greater muscle to fat ratio, and it's beneficial in sports such as long distance running. Now, the optimal body composition for an athlete can sometimes be determined by the type of sport that they participate in. For example, body conscious sports will require present with someone with a lean physique during their competition, whereas other sports such as martial arts may require a person to alter their body composition to meet a specific weight class. By determining an athlete's body composition target range, this will help a coach in altering their training program or nutritional diet to enhance their performance. There are many ways an exercise physiologist may be able to perform body composition tests. They can either do it through direct measurements or indirect estimations, such as hydrostatic weighing or anthropometric measurements. The problem with direct measurements is the time and the cost that's involved in performing these measurements. So in this study we've been using anthropometric measurements, which is more cost effective and can be performed in the athlete's general training environment. It's been hypothesised that the body composition and genetic makeup of an athlete influences the sport they participate in. So accordingly, the purpose of this study was to analyse the variations in body composition between sprinters, long distance runners and triathletes, and how it may enhance their performance in their chosen sport. 15 male participants with a mean age of 26.6 years provided their consent for this study. The athletes consisted of 5 sprinters, 5 long distance runners and 5 triathletes who were studied using anthropometric measurements to calculate the individual body compositions. Firstly, participants were requested to stand against the wall just to obtain their height, and then they stood on the scales to obtain their body weight prior to us proceeding to record the skin fold measurements and the girth measurements. In terms of skin fold measurements, an AccuMeasure body fat caliper provided these measurements. Measurements were taken from the 5 main anatomical sites being the triceps, subscapular, iliac crest, abdominal region and the thigh. After that they were totalled and an average skin fold was calculated. These average skin folds were then compared against the AccuMeasure body fat percentage measurement table, which for men, which provides each participant's body fat percentage. In terms of girth measurements, a plastic tape measure was applied lightly to their skin of the 6 common anthropometric girth measurement sites, being the right upper arm, the right forearm, abdomen, buttocks, right thigh and right calf. Finally, lean body mass was then determined by calculating the BMI, which is body weight divided by an athlete's height squared, and then each of these measurements were then compared to determine the varying level of body composition of the participants in each sport. The investigation has been able to display quite a few results. Firstly, if we look over at figure 1 here, we're showing the data, the average general measurements of each type of sporting participant. Between age, there's no statistical difference. Body height, it shows that the sprinters have a slightly higher or slightly taller than the other athletes. This will enable them to increase their stride length throughout their event, and ultimately increasing their speed. In terms of body mass, triathletes weigh a little bit more than, and long distance runners weigh in slightly lower than the other two participants. This will enable the long distance runners to expend less energy and conserve their energy as they compete in their event for a long period of time using their aerobic system. In terms of the body composition of the types of athletes, we'll first look at the skin fold measurements. As you can see, throughout these assessments, the triathletes had a greater percentage of body fat. This is due to the nature of their training requirements and their requirement to maintain both a high VO2 max and anaerobic threshold to enable them to compete in each leg of their event. This study has also been confirmed by O'Toole in 1987 that shows that they have a body fat composition similar to cyclists rather than runners. In terms of the other two types of sporting participants, being the sprinters and the long distance runners, there's no real statistical differences, except for sprinters display a greater fat percentage in the abdominal areas, whereas long distance runners display a greater fat percentage in the thigh region. Once we move over from the skin fold measurements, you come over to the girth measurements. Again, there's no real statistical difference between the three types of sporting participants. The only major difference that we did notice through this investigation was that the sprinters had a greater girth in their thigh region. Now, this has enabled them to generate more power throughout their event and enables them to generate that speed for a little, that additional time using their ATP system. And finally, we've come down and we've had a look at the body fat percentage and the BMI of the three types of athletes. As you can see here, the body fat percentage is significantly higher in the triathletes. That's due to the reasons we did discuss before about their training requirements, and the BMI is slightly higher, showing that they do have a greater lean body mass in the triathletes, whereas long distance runners have the lowest BMI. The problem that we've encountered throughout this whole investigation is the fact that there's only 15 participants who provided their consent, and we did study. The small number of these participants means that for conclusive results as a general population of the three types of athletes, we do really need a lot more athletes to provide their consent so we can make that comparison between the three different types of sports. The study has enabled conclusions to be made about the three types of sporting participants based on the number of participants that we've been able to obtain a consent from. Firstly, there's no major statistical differences between the lean body mass, weight and height of the three different sporting participants, being your sprinters, long distance runners and triathletes. Second thing is, triathletes hold a greater body fat percentage, which is due to the nature of their training requirements. And the third conclusion that has been made is that sprinters, long distance runners and triathletes maintain similar girth measurements, except that sprinters do have that greater thigh girth measurement, and this is as a result of the explosive nature of their sport. So finally, I'd like to thank you all for listening to this presentation today.